is complicated. Most human beings, most of the time, or at least some of the time, are afraid of the dark. In a story by Robert Munch, 9-year-old Jewel Ann was afraid when she inadvertently let a suspicious blob out of the family cookie jar. Her mother and father were afraid too, and greeted this intruder with consternation and anxiety. The three watched in horror as it grew larger and larger and larger by gobbling up their shadows. "What is it?" the parents asked, terrified. "It's a dark," Jewel Ann explained, whereupon her father picked it up and threw it out of the window. But outside, it continued its menacing takeover of the world by eating one shadow after another until it became as big as a hill and the day turned as dark as midnight. Both the child and the adults in this lighthearted but profound tale are afraid of the dark, a force that's personified as a hungry, menacing creature, which is fascinating if you think about it, because the first human experience of darkness was mostly one of bliss. Nestled in the warm, dark waters of creation, in our mother's womb, we grew into a human baby. But bit by bit, we became aware of the darkness and the light. We opened our eyes around 27 weeks and began to see blurry shapes. Most wonderful, we heard our mother's voice in conversation and lullabies. Now, had we been given a choice at that time, we might have opted to stay there forever, in the dark. But suddenly we were ejected into the bright light and noisy confusion of the world outside the womb. And then it became complicated. We learned that the darkness meant separation from our mother's nestling arms, or our father's. We were placed into bassinets and cribs. The light was turned off and we were alone. We cried and protested and often were smoothed by our parents' return to our bedside or by hearing their voice. When they spoke to us, it was as if the light had been turned on in our room. And eventually we learned to trust that the separation was transient and rhythmic, following a pattern we called day and night. But the older we got and the more we learned, the more we picked up and absorbed the fears of our parents and grandparents and all of our forebears, whose collective memories of the dark were complicated and paradoxical. The earliest among them, our pre-scientific ancestors of the Northern Hemisphere, celebrated the spring equinox with unbridled passion and enthusiasm. They danced like children around the bonfires they lit as they celebrated the resurrection of the world and the greening of their part of the planet. They lit these great fires to ward off their half-hidden, half-repressed fears that perhaps this time, this year, winter would not leave, the sun would not return, and they would die in the barren, icy darkness. But they also knew from experience that the darkness brought an abundance of blessings. Whether hunters or gatherers, farmers or artisans, modern or postmodern folk, we humans, especially we adults, long for the quiet of dusk and the refreshment of deep night. Just as the womb of winter gives rise to the rebirth of the natural world, the womb of sleep readies us for a new day. And most days we are ready and longing for the refreshment of a good night's sleep. Some of you with young children will know there's a book whose title I can't quite say in this space, but it's Go the Something to Sleep. Please. And most nights we do trust that God is still with us, that we are not abandoned or alone. Our forebears also knew the truth that David Byrne alludes to, which is that the dimming of the light makes the picture clearer. Or as Jagger and Richards note, it is in the evening of the day that one observes the children playing, and then the tears come. This is the blessing of discernment and perspective, a different kind of refreshment and rebirth. The stories of the saints remind us that many of them sought out the darkness of a cave or a hermitage after their conversions, to integrate their experience into the fabric of their being and to listen for the Spirit's leading. Where did the boy Samuel, or when did the boy Samuel hear God's voice? It was in the darkness of the night. And it is through the dark night of the soul that the mystics encounter their divine lover and so are transformed. There is also the blessing of integration. It's as the light dims and the shadows lengthen that we become more aware of our own shadows. On the Camino, one hears all the time that we walk to chase our shadows and to catch them so that we can know them and fold them into the fabric of our being. We learn in so many ways that our shadow selves, or as some people call them, our dark angels, cannot be simply banished or killed. For to do that would be to kill important parts of ourselves. The shadows must live. They deserve to live. At the conclusion of the Robert Munch story, Julianne captures the dark, because she's smarter than the dark, and then poignantly sets out with her watering can to resurrect all the shadows of all the people and all the objects that the creature had swallowed. And Munch ends the tale with a statement of resurrection. And in 1 week, they began to grow again. And yet, both as adults and sadly as children, we cannot escape the truth that there is much to fear in our world. Great crimes are committed under the cover of darkness, and great crimes create a cover of darkness. The world feels very dark and harrowing at times, as it does today, as we experience long shadows of violence and evil in other humans and in human structures. Leonard Cohen struggles with this in the song we hear at the end of this liturgy, attributing the world's evil to a God who loves us, but paradoxically is to blame for being the help that does not come. Cohen has experienced God as a dealer in the game of life, yet acknowledges that it is us humans who kill the flame. Cohen does not resolve the dilemma for us, nor does he articulate a coherent theodicy to absolve God or explain the world's suffering. But he does surrender to the mystery of death with trust beating in his heart. It is to this paradoxical, complicated world that Jesus came. Jesus shared our human experience of darkness to the fullest, living through its blessings as well as its curses, and yet surrendering to it all, even to death, with trust beating in his heart. Amen.